Hi everyone, I'm Dana Doyle. I'm the Director of the Online Worldwide Learning Services, otherwise known as OWLS, at MITx at MIT in Open Learning. I just want to say, more than 10 years ago, MIT announced a bold experiment, democratizing access to graduate studies for learners everywhere. The MITx MicroMasters was the result. And today I'm joined by 3 of the visionary MIT faculty behind these innovative programs. We've got Dr. Sara Ellison, who's the faculty director of the MicroMasters program in Data Economics and Design Policy. We've got Dr. Egor Matveyev, the executive director of the MicroMasters program in Finance, and Dr. Chris Caplice, the director of the MicroMasters program in Supply Chain Management. Sara, Egor, and Chris, thank you for joining us today. I know it was, a little bit of a surprise that we were all doing it in person. I know there was a little confusion there, so thank you for all showing up. And I want to say that, this is the first in a series of panels where we're going to talk with our faculty leads first, and we're going to doing this in recognition of the 10th anniversaries of the programs. And we're going to talk about not just the what of the program, but also the how and the why. So I'm hoping that each of you could start off by talking about how you became involved in the program, what your experience has been of translating the on-campus material into an online format, because I know that sometimes that can be a little bit more than you know that you signed up for, a lot of learning along the way. And what has it been like for your on-campus programs as well? So Sara, let's start with you.
So first of all, let me just say thank you, Dana, for all your support over the years, but also for inviting me here to this panel. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And thanks for the kind introduction. I think you used the words visionary. I'm not sure that exactly applies to me, but there was a visionary that put together the MicroMasters program, the DEDP MicroMasters program, that I want to mention in response to the first question. So how I got involved in it originally is that one of my colleagues, Esther Duflo, knocked on my door one day and said, "Sara, you teach 2 successful courses at MIT, one on probability and statistics and one on data analysis and regression. And what I would like you to do is retain all of the content in those courses, smush them into one semester, and we'll put it online, and I'll co-teach it with you and we'll put it online." And I thought she was crazy. But she has a track record of being a visionary and being right about a lot of things. And so I went along with her crazy idea. And that was sort of the beginning of my involvement in the DEDP MicroMasters, and then I later became faculty lead for it.
Excellent, thank you. And so how about you, Chris? How did you get roped into this?
Yeah, that's the right verb. Thanks again, and Dana, you were there from the beginning. So we started doing our first MOOC pre-MicroMasters being formed. So it was the summer of 2014. And Sanjay Sarma came and convinced us, "Hey, do you want to do a MOOC?" And it was a course I'd been teaching for over 10 years on supply chain management. And I said, sure, why not knowing anything of what it would be. And so it's like the Center for Transportation Logistics, which I'm the executive director of, which sponsors these programs, has a habit of being a guinea pig. And so we thought, if we don't do it, someone else will. Let's try it. What could happen? And so just to same with your experience, doing it, we had no idea what we were getting into. No one really knew what MOOCs were at that point. And so you're learning as you're going, and the ink wasn't dry on the videos before we released them. But it was early days, and what I loved about what MITx let us do is be very experimental. There were no rules, so you could make those rules up. So it was kind of a free-for-all for us.
How about you, Egor?
So I guess we had a little bit of a benefit that we actually, Finance MicroMasters, so we were one of the last ones, I think, to join. And so we had some of the, experience following my colleagues here in terms of what to expect.
And you still did it.
and we still did it. That was the amazing part. But the opportunity was there. So I think, Sanjay Sarma approached us in terms of just, trying to create and bring the core of our Masters in Finance program, which is one of the leading Masters in Finance program in the world, and just put it all online. And that's exactly what we did, and it took tremendous effort, not only mine effort, but a lot of faculty, finance faculty at MIT Sloan. With all of that effort, I think that the product exists right now.
Was there a concern that there'd be cannibalization? Because that's something we had at first. Will people do this? They won't come to the master's program.
And that's a great question, Chris. I think it was one of the first concerns that we had in terms of cannibalization, because the program is very selective,
right.
and it somehow people thought that if there would be a lot of demand and a lot of pathway, because this program has a pathway into our Masters in Finance program, that somehow a lot of people would be doing the MicroMasters and then getting into the main program by transferring these credits. And so there are a lot of actually thought put into like how to actually navigate that. But I would say that plus also the academic integrity piece,
yes,
just to make sure, because this is such a core knowledge for us in terms of we need to make sure that people actually know this content before coming to us. So that piece of making sure that they take exams on their own, they study the content, and they come prepared so they can take the rest of the program. I would say those two were the primary concerns from the very beginning.
And for the DEDP program, so DEDP stands for Data, Economics, and Design of Policy, as Dana said. The cannibalization wasn't even an issue for us because it was a brand new program. We saw it, the economics department saw it as an opportunity to take some content, create some new content, take some content that we already taught, and bring it to a different audience. And in particular, people who were interested in data-driven policymaking. Learning the tools and the data analysis tools, the economic theory tools, et cetera, to analyze government policies and improve them. And we saw this as just a great opportunity to do that.
So we were kind of the same. So we run a master's program that had about 40 students a year, but we also have affiliate centers across the world, 5 different scale supply chain and logistics excellence centers that each have around 40 to 50 students. So we were reaching 250, 300 students a year, but we wanted to do more. And so it was the same thing. You can reach thousands of people, and that raises its own concerns. Because when you give a lecture to 25 or 30 people, you make a mistake, maybe 1 or 2 people will figure it out.
You make a mistake?
Oh my God, you do a video and you get thousands of emails. And so it just raises the bar for what you can do. But the reach is the real thing that was attractive to us, to spread the word. And also something I love that has always been pushed is the non-traditional student, finding the non-traditional student.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
For us, this is one of the big motivations as well, because we had such an established pipeline of people who actually came into the program. And one of the ideas was, together with Open Learning, to actually expand that pipeline of who actually applies, and kind of expand the student diversity.
Did you find any diamonds in the rough?
We absolutely did.
Yeah.
We absolutely did. Yes.
That's the reason for doing this. It's
Yes,
so
absolutely.
One of our first class, the people who came through, and every MicroMasters usually is tied to a master's program, and part of it is a funnel to an MIT master's degree. And so we had one student came in who was 20 years out of his undergrad, didn't finish his undergrad, would never have gotten into grad school, and he ended up being phenomenal. We just couldn't tell anyone that we admitted him, but that's what the program is for. And so that was beneficial.
I want to amplify this. This was not something that we anticipated going in. That we would be able to, we thought, okay, we're going to increase our reach. We're going to, offer this content to a wider group. But being able to identify the non-traditional students, the students who maybe needed a second chance, et cetera, but were capable of excelling at MIT is one of the really sort of, to me, surprising benefits of the MicroMasters. And I could tell stories. I mean, if we had, how many hours do we have, Dana?
We have a little bit of time. And that kind of goes into the next question where we were going to talk a little bit more about the learners. And I think not only are you maybe surprised by some of the learners who are excelling in your programs, but I think sometimes they are surprised by themselves. And so I'm curious if any of you have any stories where you have either, because I'm sure as people move through the program, you start recognizing people who are like very active in the courses, people who are doing well, or maybe people who have, improved over time. So do you have any kind of stories of learners where you've heard from them that they surprised themselves, or, kind of like, you have your superstar learners, like the people who have done like 5 MicroMasters, and to me those are like exceptional people, right? They're just, but you have a lot of people who are exceptional in different ways and maybe don't know that about themselves. And so if you have any experience of seeing learners blossom in this area where they may have, like, they would have maybe never even come to MIT or even thought they could do MIT work, and then they come here and they maybe wind up in your program and getting a master's from MIT.
So many stories. One that just pops into my mind, a woman who she was sort of looking for a career pivot. And I don't mean a little pivot, I mean a complete change. She had been running her own landscaping business for a number of years and was interested in development economics and poverty alleviation, and somehow came across our courses online, took the courses, applied to our program, came, she has young children at home. She did our master's degree while taking care of her young children. Did an excellent job and is now actually helping us create new MOOCs.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I said, I could go on and on. We have so many examples.
I think the fun examples I get is when, first 2 things. The majority of people who finish the MicroMasters don't come to MIT. Mm-hmm. They might not want to, they're doing their own career for whatever, they can't go away for 5 months, so that's the vast majority. But when the ones that do come, it's the best day is seeing them when they get here, or when they graduate, and you hear their spouses talk, and they hear you talk, and they freeze up because they've heard my voice for like 80 hours in the other room. Because I remember this one woman, she's similar, she had kids, she did the course after hours for 2 years, one course at a time. And when we finally came back, it's her husband who said, "Oh my God, your voice, it's the voice on the other side of the door." But I think the real thing that comes out from these students is the level of grit is way outweighs any technical knowledge they learn. To me, that the attitude of being able to just do this with no one pressuring them, because the cost of stopping is 0. Stopping cost, switching cost is 0. So that's the big takeaway for me. What I see for all these students is the level of grit for these people who do it online before they come is amazing.
Yes, and it's exactly the same for our courses. And I think my favorite analogy here is that when I have students in the room, they're captive. Like when they're here in the physical program, they have to come and they have to listen to me talk for 80 minutes, and they cannot leave.
And they can laugh at your jokes.
And they can laugh at my jokes, and they can do. But here you have to take, the entire semester of very heavy content, all in your own, without actually anyone pressuring you, or And so, as you said, Chris, the cost of quitting is actually zero. But I want to also, sort of build on something that you mentioned earlier, is that the vast majority of people that actually do this MicroMasters program, they don't come to MIT. So they do it, and to me, I think one of my favorite things that I've observed, at least in our program, is the cohort building. Among themselves. Yeah. The very first ones, I remember that they made friends, literally like our own in-residence students do, creating exactly the same cohorts. And then these kind of friendships and relations persist throughout time. Mm-hmm. And some of my favorite anecdotes, when people switch careers, then they actually hire some of their fellow MicroMaster students that they learned online during actually going through these courses.
Yeah, we say when I travel sometimes to these other centers, and we'll always do an open house or something, and there are MicroMaster learners everywhere, and they all know each other. They form little cohorts and everything. They get Instagram pictures. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I didn't see that happening where doing this stuff on your own, it seems like a very solo activity, but they crave the connection to a cohort.
Yeah. And I'm gonna circle back a little bit to the making of the courses themselves. And so you had both talked a little bit about taking MIT content and squeezing it into a course. And so talking about like this grit that it takes and kind of the engagement that people need in order to be motivated to keep coming back and doing this hard work. Thinking of that or seeing that, did that change the way that you thought about designing the course online versus the way that it's offered residentially? And like, what did you learn as far as like, maybe what did you think of beforehand and what did you learn and switch along the way of like, okay, well, that's not working. And maybe if I do this or make this problem more like this or et cetera, like what kind of things did you discover along the way of how to make it more approachable for these people who are working so hard? Chris, let me start with you. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was waiting to see who was going to get this first.
I'm gonna give you the nod.
So the biggest thing is, I think what Egor said, you don't have a captive audience anymore. Mm-hmm. They can flip off or go to YouTube in 2 seconds. So the level of energy has to be very high. You have to be excited for that. And then the other thing that we found is which is online education, shorter bursts. You have to do things very short, very concise. But it's like the third evolution since I've been teaching at MIT since the early 2000s. It was traditional lectures, like when I went here at Blackboard. Then it went to active learning. Do you remember that? Where you had things due in the classroom, which you cannot do in a video. Mm-hmm. So we actually went backwards and went back. You have to be very compelling for short bursts of time and then intertwine interactive exercises. So it totally changed the way that I approach teaching. A little bit for how I teach in person as well, but I think it was a totally different way of doing it. I couldn't just use my slides and just talk for 40 minutes because they wouldn't make it past the third slide.
I guess in a similar vein, I mean, I had mentioned earlier that Esther Duflo had come to me with this idea of compressing 2 semesters worth of MIT content into one MOOC, and I thought it was crazy. And what I didn't realize was that when the content gets edited down into these little digestible chunks, that learners can watch them multiple times, or they can watch them once and let the content sink in a little bit, or they can do the finger exercises after each chunk to let that knowledge kind of take root in a way that's impossible in a residential class. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is the real power of the sort of online technology, is that we can sort of mimic the way that people learn most efficiently.
The student controls the pace.
The student controls the pace, and yeah, absolutely. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me that and that has fed back into my pedagogical thinking as well.
So for us, it was very similar. So we had to break everything down in chunks because the content is very heavy. And you have to be very short, you have to be entertaining, you have to make sure that they follow, but then critically, you need to be able to have some exercises of the kind of nature, Chris, that you mentioned. And we've developed this, concept checks, as we call them, that after every short segment, we ask a set of questions that, are designed to keep people engaged and make sure they understand the concept before actually moving on. Mm-hmm. And also, I would say that we actually track so that the ability, how many times people actually watch a given video, we actually track the statistics. And I think it's a remarkable thing because, with such heavy content, and if it's complicated and if it takes time to digest, the ability to pause, the ability to rewind and go back and watch one more time is actually priceless.
And that changes how you develop it because
Yes.
I like to think of if I lecture in person, it's beer. Right? I got to be, look at the one person in the room and moderate person and go at a moderate pace. If I'm doing it canned like this, it's whiskey and they can sip it at their own pace. So you can make it very dense and they can determine how fast they want to go. Have you asked your students what speed they play you at?
Everything from half speed to double speed. I don't know if it's beyond those bounds, but I mean, yeah. Just
For us, the median is actually just one, just
Yeah.
one, because I think it's heavy enough to go at double speed.
And so, Chris, you mentioned a little bit about a bit of an impact on your residential teaching. Can you talk a little bit more about like what you have learned online that actually does translate or inform your residential teaching?
Funny story. So the videos came out in the fall of 2014, and I was teaching the in-person course at the same time. And the students learned that there's videos out there. And they said, can we get access to the videos? And I said, of course not. You've got me live. Why would you want video? And they said, that's great. That's great. Can we get the videos? And so they really wanted the videos so they could do exactly what you were saying, Sarah. They could go back, go forward, because we all know if you're teaching in person and you got to get this much done, you're going to go until you see 3 heads nod, and you're going to keep going because you've got to keep the train going because you're controlling the pace. They can do the videos, they can watch them. So we've integrated the videos into it. The course, but we're still struggling, to be honest, how to incorporate those. Do you make them replace the lectures? Do they complement the lectures? Do you require it? But it has changed more or less the way that I teach. I don't know, have you incorporated the videos in the courses in campus?
We have tried. So we haven't fully done that.
Yeah.
But early on, we actually did share them with, so this was for the Masters in Finance program, but we obviously have our Master of Business Administration, the MBA program as well. And early on, we actually used to make the MicroMasters videos available to the MBA students as well, just so that they can, watch it one more time or have somebody else kind of, hearing how people talk about the same concepts. But more recently, I think we have not really made that available. And I think it's a little bit broader decision, like we just in general, even our own recorded lectures, we just don't make them available to our students by default. So, but we've kind of played with the idea of different versions of it, I guess, similar to what you did.
I think we like them as so I think there's 2 types of ways to learn with books. There's the on-ramp book, where you learn the concepts. It's really slow, very introductory, but you don't want that if you want to refer back. Then you have the very dense referral book. And so when people took our course for the first time, they did the videos. We didn't think we needed a book. And that's one of the first questions they asked. Where's the book? Because I need some reference guide for it. So we had to create one. So what I really learned from this is that people don't learn in one way. They need multiple media and they consume them differently. And so we're treating the videos as, they're there if you need them, if you want to go back and redo things. But yeah, we don't lead with them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, one of our MOOCs in the MicroMasters is being taught at MIT in a flipped classroom, fully flipped classroom. So there are no lectures. The students are assigned to watch the lectures on video from the MOOC, and then all of the class time is spent in discussion of case studies that are related to the lectures.
How's that working out?
I think it's working out very well. The students seem to be really engaged, and they sort of get the best of both worlds. They have the videos that they can watch at whatever speed that they would like, and then they get, here's the professor in person,
right.
and we can and I can ask him or her questions and. Yeah,
that's great.
So I will add sort of, I guess another anecdote how we actually use this content right now. So oftentimes it just gives us a backup option. For example, there was a recent episode, we rely on a lot of international students in the Masters in Finance program. So recently people were kind of delayed in getting here. So I think one of the ways that we actually use MicroMasters content is that giving people access. So you could be abroad and you can actually start the program by watching the videos and doing the homeworks, because it's literally the same content as we teach on campus. So it gives us a little bit of that optionality sort of in delivering the residential content if we ever need to tap into this.
Excellent. All right. Let's see here. Let me see where we are. I've got non-traditional students. And so we did talk about students. We talked about non-traditional students. We talked about the breadth of experience that students have, the grit that they bring to the program, which I know for me is always one of the most amazing things, because and I hate to say this publicly, but like I've never finished a MOOC. I've tried, I've taken them, but like I don't have that grit of like just coming back and doing something, because it's an amazing amount of work. And
It is.
when we have that, the MicroMaster celebration, that is one of the most like inspiring things that I do every year, right? I mean, like just to see how excited everybody is, the amount of people that have completed, the stories that they share. I mean, it's incredible. Like I'm
Agreed.
like, oh, there are wonderful people in the world who like are not afraid of hard work and just keep plugging along, even when they're just really struggling. Like they just keep showing up, and it's really very incredible.
We do a credential celebration for the SCM, the supply chain credential holders, every January. And it's because we have all the blended program comes for that, plus any other ones who want to come. And what's funny is they all have shared experiences independently, but they come together. And I always do the talk of the three things that I get asked the most. And the number one is, of course, can I take a picture with you? Because they've seen you for so long. It's so asymmetric. But also I end all my lectures, I don't know if you have a shtick, but with my dogs, pictures of my dogs. And your dog was in there once. And they always ask where the dogs are. So one year I brought the dogs. And they were more excited by seeing the dogs than by seeing anything else. But the level of excitement is amazing for the students. And when they come on campus, compared to the residential who'd been there before, it's dramatically different, the level of energy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I want to emphasize the fact that the residential master students who come through our MicroMasters, they enrich our department and our courses so much. The enthusiasm, the grit, the non-traditional experiences. Some of them are mid-career.
Yes.
I mean, just they're from all over the world. They bring such a rich set of interests, experiences, personalities, etc., and knowledge, and they enrich our department remarkably.
When we had our first cohort come in 2017, 2018 was the first class, we were concerned because we had a residential class that started in August, takes 10 months, and then these blended students who'd done the MicroMasters credentials and came in, they'd come in January. We thought there'd be competition between the cohorts. And so we had a study done to see how well they did. And so it was done, and it found that the blended students who came in through the MicroMasters did better grade-wise in every class, not just against our residential students, but against the other MIT students because of the level of excitement. But the most interesting thing, quick anecdote, is initially the residential students said, who are these newcomers coming here? We're the real MIT. We've been here since August. We know the deal. And they're a little, say, who are these new kids coming? And the blended students coming in said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for 2 years in my basement, and so I'm the real MIT. So it was really funny. Initially there was friction, but it doesn't exist anymore. They become one cohort, but it was just two different paths.
That's interesting.
I think it's that funnel, right? So like people who actually end up with all of this grit and perseverance, like actually
Absolutely.
ended up, finishing the MicroMasters and then coming. It takes so much work and effort that I think you have to be outstanding in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
And we have fewer anecdotes than maybe both of your programs, but we have them as well. That people that eventually show up through the MicroMasters pathway, they are remarkable in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some go on for PhDs, which we didn't expect and we never encouraged it to be. This was not meant to be. This is more of a professional degree. We expect you to go out and work in industry, but some people find they love it and they will continue through.
Yes, and we have too. We've had quite a number go on to PhDs, both at MIT and other institutions.
So I'm curious for the, as you just mentioned, kind of considering it to be a professional degree and people going into industry. And so if you've got, and as you mentioned, like a majority of these people obviously do not come to MIT or necessarily go to another pathway school. Right. What's your experience as far as people using the MicroMasters as the end of what they're trying to do, in order to progress their careers or to shift their careers? Like, have you had any experience in seeing or hearing from employers or from the learners themselves of like, okay, I got my MicroMasters credential and I made this change in my career, or I got, so not necessarily I'm coming to get a master's degree, but it did still have a positive impact on their life. Egor, let's start with you.
We have the majority of use cases like this, actually. So we have so many people that do career pivots. And I think this content is really because this is something that you learn MIT quality finance content that I would say, just to promote it a little bit, if I may, is second to none. So I think everyone who should, whoever wants to, pivot careers and learn finance, please come to us. But in all seriousness, it really is the best way to actually start learning the new subject. And I would say for us, the two types of use cases. One is just to develop understanding a little bit better, because the content that we have actually also goes deeper than just an intro finance course that you can find online. So it's that kind of like, deepening your knowledge, and then also kind of, the career pivot. And we have so many, cases. I mentioned the kind of cohorts of especially early learners that kind of went through the program. A lot of them got their first finance jobs as the result of the engaging the MicroMasters program. And we actually do a lot of analysis. I'm not sure if learners are aware of that, but we actually track their career progression through LinkedIn and some other means. And all of them actually have fairly successful kind of career progression. And to me, I think that's very natural, because that's the big reason why we've created this product to be to enable people to actually do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
So the pivot is a really good point. What we found is that, especially during COVID, when supply chain became a concept that everyone understood, now or they realized when it didn't work, and so people will be looking for, oh, that looks interesting, and Google supply chain, and so we saw a lot of pivots, especially there, coming from IT a lot of times, but getting into that was a great introduction. But another point that we've seen that kind of drives this home is companies have realized it. And so we have companies like Schlumberger, SLB, like GE Vernova, and others, where they will sponsor students to just go and take the regular MicroMasters, no special cohort. And if they do well and get into MIT, they'll sponsor them. So we'll have 100 people from a company taking this. Not all want to come, not all can come, but it's a way of putting a stamp of validation on it within that company, saying this will, we want you to take this course, and we're keeping our eye on you. So it's being used within companies a lot, which is nice to see. Not just a one-to-one. I didn't see that. I thought we'd just be going for one-off individuals, but companies are starting to use it for their upskilling.
So we had, I don't have all the details at my fingertips, but we had a recent MicroMasters credential holder featured in the MIT, by the MIT News Office. There was a news story written about him and how he leveraged the knowledge that he got from the DEDP MicroMasters into, sort of his new position, and how life-changing it was for him. And so we hear a lot of stories like that. We hear about the career pivots, but also the people who just needed to, were already in policy making and just thought this is really important content. I need to understand how to assess the policies in my home government a little bit more effectively, and
I would also
has helped them.
I would also like to add one point, if I may, in terms of knowledge certification. So I think what really makes this product unique compared to some of the other online products out there is that we have proctored exams because of this pathway into the residential program. So it's not just finishing MicroMasters and actually getting a credential. It's not just you watched a few videos and maybe you clicked on a couple of online questions. It actually requires you, and we still write these exams as we do for our in-residence program students at MIT. So those are MIT quality exams. And I think what, it's still kind of a niche market for now, but what I really want employers to recognize more, because students are very well aware of them, of this fact that it's that knowledge certification that carries the weight of the completion of this program. But what I really wish that would happen a little bit more is that the employers would actually recognize this fact. And the fact that this, it's called MicroMasters in finance, but it actually, first of all, it's a huge chunk of content. And second, we are, as faculty and as Sloan School of Management, doing a job of certifying that knowledge. And so when somebody hires a person that actually went through this, MITx MicroMasters in finance, I wouldn't say it's an equivalent of some other residential Masters in Finance program, but it comes close. It comes close in terms of the knowledge. It comes close in terms of the fact that we actually certified that knowledge, and I think that alone actually carries a lot of weight and allows this type of career pivots that we just discussed.
So I think one of the benefits of having a sister master's program on campus that we have to feed into is a great forcing mechanism for academic integrity.
Yes.
Because it's not just so when they get here, you know they've learned certain things, but also that we can get it through the faculty that the credits count. That's the big thing. But by doing that, it strengthens the credential itself. Because you're right, we have proctored exams as well, and it just makes a difference. It raises the level of rigor that it produces.
Absolutely.
And I just want to note, I want to say for anybody who has taken a proctored exam, run a proctored exam, had anything to do with a proctored exam, thank you very much, because it is an enormous amount of work to run those.
Yes.
So hard.
But to your point, it is very important that we have that academic integrity part so that it carries that weight that it does.
The first time we ran it, we made our final CFX. We did the 5 courses, then a comprehensive final exam that is fully proctored. It used to be 2-day, and it used to be in person. I'd make them come to MIT or one of our scale centers. That lasted 2 cycles. That was too much. So having this virtual proctoring just makes a lot of sense. But it is a lot of work.
Yes.
It is.
That was our approach as well for the purpose of the academic integrity. I think the entire faculty was that we're actually going to run these exams in person, in some centers. And then I guess based on your experience, we quickly realized that it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
And so we rely on this online proctoring, but that proctoring is still crucial. And I think what really establishes, I think that pathway, Chris, as you mentioned. So this pathway what enables this proctoring and knowledge certification that,
Absolutely,
in my view, carries the enormous weight on these programs and really puts them apart from any other sort of online educational product that is out there.
But you talk about companies endorsing and things like that. Have you guys had any spouses or sibling references? Like I've had a spouse recommend their spouse to take it. No. The husband and then the wife takes it, or the brother recommends that the sister take it. So we've seen a lot of that going through with other family members come through because they see it as a pathway.
I see. Interesting.
Wow. At every level.
Yeah, my brothers and sisters would never.
Oh yeah, they would never listen to me. They'd be like, "Oh, never mind if you did that." All right, so I'm going to ask kind of a future forward question of, in your experience of the MicroMasters, what are some of the key things that you would want to see MIT and open learning do to kind of further the vision of the MicroMasters? Is it anything? Anything that you've seen, or even that maybe you've kind of done on your own without maybe even letting us know? I'm not sure. Anything like that as far as what would make the MicroMasters stronger, better, more relevant, anything like that? Chris, why don't we start with you?
Shoot, I was trying to look down.
Sorry,
Have someone else start.
No.
I think the thing that's going to happen, I think this has been a trend way before MicroMasters. It used to be you'd come for 4 years, and then for a master's 2 years, and then it became 1 year is okay as for a Master of Engineering. And now we're saying as you go through in life, and then again you were done with your learning by 24. Mm-hmm. Those are gone. Those are fallacies now. It's lifelong learning, and you need to learn what you need to learn when you need to learn it. And so I think what that's doing is more specialized, modular, focused areas. And so we have these 5 12-week courses of 8 weeks of content. Maybe they need to be more focused. So I see more focused, shorter modules where people can learn what they need to do for specific skills. I'm not going away from more traditional classes that give a larger perspective of things. They complement each other. But I see many more smaller, focused, very high tech mini courses. Mm-hmm. Micro.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think reaching the right audience for that is important?
I think it's important for career progression, especially we have a lot of people who are mid-career, they're at a large retailer, for example, and suddenly they need to learn about X. And they can't go away for 2 years. And so they learn that. And then they might say, well, maybe I want to see the whole picture. Because a lot of times, I don't know if you have this, where someone's been working one part of the area,
yes,
but they don't know the other ones, and it fleshes that out.
yes, for us, I would say it's very similar, but it's a little bit more about kind of reaching their audience as well, like kind of the right audience and finding, for whom this content would actually be of value, like it's kind of spreading the word that this is even kind of available in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, MITx and OWLS have been great partners in helping us establish these programs and getting the word out. And I want to keep doing that. I think that's super important to try to reach the right audiences. It turns out that there is a lot of demand for our content, and we're finding this as we travel to, as we talk to colleagues at different universities, travel to different countries, as our DEDP graduates go back often to their home countries and spread the word about the DEDP content. And so we have been approached by a lot of universities across the world to help them set up a similar program, to sort of leverage the content in the MicroMasters and help them set up a master's program. Nice. And we're actively doing this at the top technical university in Côte d'Ivoire now, at a university in Sao Paulo, the Paris School of Economics, places all over the world.
Awesome.
So another future area that students always ask for is more courses. They want more specialty electives. And so we, at the center, we also have MOOCs, which are not, the difference between a MOOC and a MicroMasters, in my opinion, is you don't have the academic integrity. You're not as focused on that. It's pure learning. You learn to learn. Right. So we have one in sustainability, humanitarian logistics, and advanced network design. And the next thing maybe is to make electives within the MicroMasters. So you take, of these 10 courses, pick 8 or something like that. That giving more flexibility is one way. We're still weighing that option, but that's always a big question. They want to take more courses and get more content.
Amazing. Because there wasn't enough content to begin with.
So much content.
All right. Okay, so those are the questions that I have. And so we have some audience questions. So I'm going to cover some of those. So the first one I've got here is the hot topic of the day, which is AI. So the question,
what is AI?
I'm not sure. All right, so we've got, given the rapid advancement of AI, do you think the perceived value of supply chain courses and professional certifications might decrease as AI enables people without formal training to access and apply similar knowledge? How should educators and institutions respond to this challenge?
So many questions there. First, no, obviously, because what we teach is context. And so that's one of the things that the Gen AI tends to not have it. The user has to have the context to understand what they're asking. But then the real question is, how do we approach AI? And so there's a continuum, right? On one extreme, we ban it, right? And there's some schools that will do that for in-person, can't use AI, it's cheating, whatever. And then the other extreme is allow them to use it however they want to do it. And so we're trying to find that middle ground. It doesn't make sense to ban it because then you're training them how to fight with a knife and sending them out to a gunfight. It makes no sense. But you want to keep the AI away from assessment. And that's what the proctoring becomes so important. AI, even if you cheat with AI, you learn a little. And so we try to leverage AI as much as possible because it's a great complementary skill. And a tool, and we're seeing it change everything, not just in the MicroMasters and virtual, but in person. It's changing the way I do my work and approach, and it's changing the way the students do it as well. And it's all happened within the last 4 years, if that, 3 years.
Right. Sara?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I mean, it does not make sense to ban AI. Generative AI it gives us a set of very powerful tools, and but they have to be used by human beings who understand them,
right,
who are well trained, who have a broad knowledge in the area that they're using them, and can understand when the AI is leading them astray. And so that's a challenge for us going forward to make sure our students have those capabilities and that knowledge.
And I will add to it by just providing one example that right now, if you want to learn finance, going to ChatGPT and start asking questions is just not the right way of doing it. Instead, taking the MicroMasters in finance and watching the videos and going through the courses is the right way of doing it. Because somebody, it's kind of the content knowledge and the content expert who thought about how to lay everything out in terms of educating the person. But what we are thinking in terms of kind of how to leverage it a little bit, some of the exciting work that colleagues at Open Learning are doing in terms of helping people sort of with the modern AI tools, once they understand kind of the building blocks, if they don't understand one specific question, being able to ask that question and then help kind of the engine, help them to bridge that level, the gap, if they don't understand something. So it's a little bit more kind of a personalized, like adaptive approach to help people with specific questions. But it's definitely not kind of a replacement approach that instead of this type of expert content, I'm going to Gen AI and start learning from scratch. And even using it as kind of asking questions kind of generically is not probably the best way of doing it unless you understand really the content very well in the first place.
Yeah, personalization at scale is a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's almost having a little custom tutor
Absolutely.
next to you. That's the goal.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
And one of the great benefits of having AI come out, ChatGPT, is there's a site called Chegg, which we used to call the cheating website.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
It
the
shares
stock
just
price
dropped.
collapsed. Yes, that was one of my favorite examples. It's just amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like that entire business model
To put them out of business.
Put them
made me
out of the
happy.
business right there. It was amazing.
I know a lot less takedown notices that we have to send out.
Yeah.
All right.
But it has raised, I think the other thing it's done is raise the level of expertise by the instructor. You have to be more than just a ChatGPT instructor and showing stuff. You have to show more content. So it actually has raised the bar in what we have to deliver.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
All right. Next one I've got. We kind of covered this one already. How do employers view the MicroMasters program compared to traditional, I guess, programs? It says ones, but I think programs. Any insights on that? Yep.
I can speak a little bit to it. So as I mentioned, sort of through those cohort examples, like people that went through the content, they really kind of appreciate that level of certification and level of knowledge and understanding of finance. But I would say that, Dana, you earlier asked in terms of what I wish, sort of like kind of the future, the path forward. I want more kind of understanding of that level of depth and certification, especially among the employers. And I think if one thing we can do to kind of collectively, because of what also Chris mentioned, that pathway, right? So like what makes that academic integrity piece and that online product is so unique is that pathway that requires us to certify that knowledge at a very high level. And if we can let employers know that and understand kind of the value of it, I would say that that alone can kind of spread the word and kind of increase the employer how much they put value on this product that in this program that we are running.
I think every company has a culture where they tend to like people from certain local universities usually. Talk to P&G and they have a certain profile, talk to Walmart, they do. And so they're looking for a certain type of employee, and different schools produce different things. Some people come to MIT to interview for a certain type of person. And so we're finding that that's there. But what I'm finding really interesting is once you get MicroMasters in a company, they start forming a mafia. And they start hiring other ones and other ones and starts building that culture. And we see this more and more happening with companies, like having a beach hold, right? And then you start growing because they know these people, to your point, where they know that they know this material. And that's someone I can trust.
And they know how much grit they have and how difficult it was to get through the MicroMasters.
So we need to do a better job of spreading the word.
Well, the one thing that I was going to note is that we are working on the digital credentials, which will include a lot, because right now, like you get a certificate and it just says the title of the course. It doesn't, and the one thing that's always, that I looked for an opportunity for the credentials is like, it doesn't really communicate the depth and the, because you can get a credential and, how do you know it wasn't a 6-hour course with 2 hours of work a week versus a 13-week course with 6 to 10 hours a week? Like, you can't tell that from the credential. So now what we're working on is a digital credential, which will be attached, that you can send to the employer, that lists out everything that you covered, so a lot more detail about what goes into that credential. And so that's being actively worked on. We have some test cases for right now that we're working on, which I have been, because that's always been one of my pet peeves, is like, the weight of the credential is hard to tell just by looking at the link that somebody sends you.
I do admissions for our graduate program, people coming in. I'm looking at transcripts all the time from different schools. I'm shocked at the difference in levels of classes that the same degree from different universities take.
Exactly.
There are a lot of like history of yoga stuff and things in there. It's like, you did what? There's no calculus anywhere in this. And so it's funny, there's very little level setting. No accreditation does it, but it's shocking the variation.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that, because that's something I had been asking for a long time.
It's really great. As of now, we just write, kind of a letter of completion.
Yep.
Where we're actually outlining exactly what they did and how many hours of content they covered. But having, this type of digital credential, I think would go a long way.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting thing is that there is kind of a, and I can't remember the organization that does it, but basically like, common skill names that are applicable across an industry, so that starts getting accepted of like, okay, so this is what this means. And so that as more people use the digital credentials, everybody will understand that, the history of yoga class means this, versus the statistics class, which means this, and so really kind of understanding what those skills are, and even just not even what is the class, but what is the skill learned in it, right? And so that kind of, again, speaks to the breadth of the course, but also kind of goes into that, what did you learn, not just did you ask AI.
I think it's very amenable to engineering. It might, I don't know how amenable it is to other programs, other degrees. Finance probably, it's skill-based.
Yes, it's skill-based, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, let's see, we have another one here. What have been the most valuable insights you've gained from the MicroMasters community? Sara, let's start with you. I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We've learned a lot from the MicroMasters community. I mean, I think we touched on this earlier, but the way that MIT has done admissions forever is pretty darn effective, but the MicroMasters credential holders who then apply to come to MIT to do the masters and are so successful has sort of opened our eyes to alternative models of admission to higher education.
Wow.
And so we've had conversations with MIT's the head of admissions for undergraduates for MIT, saying, look, we have this model for admissions for our master's program, and it's been wildly successful in identifying non-traditional students from all over the world, students with very different backgrounds, some of whom don't have bachelor's degrees, some of whom have never even been on a college campus before, and they come to MIT and they succeed. I wonder if this could be used, a model like this could be used at the undergraduate level too.
Wow.
So,
that would be exciting.
Yeah.
It
would be.
So I'm reminded of a story you mentioned that you track the number of hours they watch videos and things like that. I did that as well too, for very different reasons. Initially for the first classes, I wanted to see people who had really high scores and didn't watch a single video, because I was finding cheaters, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so I identified them, and of course, being me, I reached out to these people, to one of the guys, and emailed and said, hey, I noticed you did really well, but you haven't watched any videos. And what I learned is that he responded immediately, said, oh my gosh, so great to talk with you, blah, blah, blah. I have no internet at home, so I get the video at work, put it on my phone, I watch it on the bus ride that's 2 hours to get home. And I felt like a total idiot and a jerk. But it taught me again the grit and the level. And you haven't finished a MOOC. I finished one MOOC. But the level of investment that these people have to do this, and on your bus ride home, you're learning things. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the takeaway lesson that I've learned.
Yeah. Egor, anything?
Yes. No, just to add to a little bit. So I think what Sara was saying in terms of the undergraduate admissions, I think it's extremely powerful. And I think some of these things that we learned, how we reach, and for us as well, how we reach different corners of the kind of market. I mean, for us, obviously, it's graduate admissions, but if we can apply it kind of more broadly, and the original question, what we learned from the MicroMasters community, I think that could be extremely, extremely powerful.
Excellent. All right. So that, I'm sorry. One more question asked by several people. Ready? What will be the next MicroMasters program? So not for any of you, and I am actually not going to say, but I will say that we are working on one right now, and I'm hoping that we will be announcing it maybe in the summer. If anything, we'll at least be putting out some new courses, because sometimes what we do is we actually start with building courses before we announce the program. But just so that you know, if you happen to take one of those courses, it still counts towards your MicroMasters program, even if it has not been announced yet. So we are very excited about our upcoming MicroMasters, which I am not going to say the name of, just to keep everybody in suspense.
All right.
You could probably guess, if you think about what would be a good MicroMasters that MIT could make that would be pertinent now. Your guess is probably a good one. So I just want to say thank you again, Sara, Chris, Egor, for joining us here and taking us behind the scenes of what goes into making a MicroMasters program, how it's changed things for you personally at MIT, areas where we're going to grow into. I also want to thank everybody who has tuned in. I really appreciate you taking the time and meeting with us and hearing from our esteemed faculty members who have worked so hard on these programs for years at this point. And I want to say to the people who we've also had work with our resource development team who has helped put this together. We have several more things coming up. And I also would like to welcome you to support our work by sharing our resources with your friends, colleagues, and families, as we're talking about maybe your brother should be taking a MicroMasters, I'm not sure. Sharing your experience and story using our free MIT resources. So you will see on many of your emails there is an invitation for you to share your story with us. We are always looking for new stories. As Sara mentioned, we actually had a MIT news article based on one of those stories. And we find them very inspiring. We like to share them. We share it with people who support the program through donations. And if you would like to be one of the people supporting through a donation, please do. We are always looking for support. And it not only contributes to supporting the courses, but also our experiments and our innovations into the future of online learning. So we thank you all for that. We have 2 more events to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the MITx MicroMasters. Our next panel, Building Excellence Online, How the MicroMasters Programs Are Powered, will take place on Tuesday, February 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be hearing from the behind the scenes people. So you probably will recognize some of the names if you have taken the MicroMasters, because these are the people that are in the forums, people who are answering your emails, people who are troubleshooting behind the scenes, and the people who have to work on those proctored exams. So if you've taken a proctored exam, you probably know some of these people.
So Dana, that's a great point, because making the videos and making the content is one deal, and that's hard. Running these at one after the other is so much harder. Eva Ponce and her whole team who runs these constantly, that's such work. They get all the credit.
Yeah, it's even though you may have been doing it for years, there's a new problem every day that you were not expecting. And then the same old problems tend to come up again as well. On March 5th at 9 a.m., we'll hear from MicroMasters learners in our 3rd panel, Resilience, Growth, and Perseverance, as we were talking about that grit. Lessons from MicroMasters learners. So we hope to see you then, and thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to continuing to learn with you in MITx and MIT. Thank you very much.